Hi, my name is Lily and welcome back to my channel and welcome to my Christmassy, wintry books recommendations. So I'm going to be recommending to you some of my favourite wintry and Christmassy reads. This isn't an exhaustive list obviously, but it is just some of my favourites that I found on my shelves. And yeah, I'm just going to get straight into it. There's going to be a mixture of different kinds of books, so hopefully there is something here for everybody. So the first two are books that I don't have physically, so I'm going to talk to you about them first. The first one is the A Boy Called Christmas series by Matt Haig. Matt Haig writes some really amazing middle grade books that I feel like people don't know about because he seems to be better known for his adult work, but the A Boy Called Christmas series is really, really good. The first book is about a young boy who lives in I believe it's like Norway kind of area, but I'm not sure if it's specified. And basically his dad goes out one day on a job and doesn't come back, so he goes out to try and find his dad, and he basically stumbles across the North Pole with the elves, and he gets involved. It's kind of like a Santa Claus origin story, and it is really, really good, and it's about trolls and about elves and about overcoming bad people, and it just is such a good series. There are 3 books I think, and then there's spin-offs about the Truth Pixie, which is one of the side characters in the A Boy Called Christmas series, and yeah, I really love it. It is a really great book to read. It's one that I would really recommend if you read aloud to children. Now would be a great time to start reading aloud the A Boy Called Christmas series, or at least the first book to your kids so that you can read it before Christmas. And yeah, it is just such a lovely series, so sweet and wholesome, and has some really great messages in it for you. Next is one for the grown-ups, and that is The Mistletoe Motive by Chloe Lee. This is a holiday novella and it's about 2 bookstore workers, so you know we love it. This one is a enemies to lovers romance. It is a little bit steamy, but it is a slow burn because Chloe Lee does slow burns, and basically this is about 2 people that manage a bookstore, and I can't remember the names even though I only read it this week, but I'm so bad. Oh, Gabby is the girl. I don't remember the name of the guy. I don't remember, but basically it's about these 2 people who co-manage a bookstore together. Gabby, the girl, is autistic and she is very, very creative, and she basically is the heart and the soul of the place. And then the male main character, he's very analytical, very numbers driven, and he is there to kind of help bring up the bottom line and make difficult decisions, and he's kind of like the hardline manager, and they work really well together on paper as like a balancing out each other out, but in reality they are very hostile towards each other and they absolutely hate each other. And it's about how the bookstore is struggling. They get told that if the numbers in December aren't as good as they need to be, then either the bookstore is going to close or the owners are going to have to cut one of them. So it's about them trying to save the bookstore and falling in love while they do it, and it's so cute, it's so cozy, it's such a good cozy romance, and it's really sweet because you get to see like the male main character really showing that he pays attention and that he cares about our female main character. There's also type 1 diabetes rep with him, so it is just a really good, diverse and lovely story, and it's quite a quick read, so would highly recommend it if you want to get into the Christmas spirit with a steamy romance. Now the next one is another novella kind of thing, and that is 'Twas the Night Shift Before Christmas by Adam Kay. So Adam Kay wrote This Is Going to Hurt, which is basically his adaptations of his own diaries from when he was a junior doctor. I believe he said they're rewritten a little bit, but it's basically his diaries from when he was a junior doctor, telling all of his funny and also his harrowing stories, explaining why he ended up leaving and becoming a comedian instead of staying and being a doctor. And basically Adam Kay is Jewish, and when you're a junior doctor you rotate around hospitals and departments and they don't really know much about your history in the other places, and so he ended up working Christmas nearly every single year that he was a junior doctor because they knew he was Jewish and he didn't have children, he wasn't married, so they basically always put him on at Christmas because they thought he'd be fine with it, not knowing that he'd worked pretty much every Christmas he'd ever been a doctor. And so this is his bringing together all of his great Christmas stories from when he worked Christmas as a doctor. I think it's great, it's really funny. He tells the stories in a way that's sensitive to the patients involved, but it's also absolutely hilarious. It's definitely more lighthearted than This Is Going to Hurt, because This Is Going to Hurt starts off amazingly well and it's really, really funny, but it ends on a very harrowing note because it tells a story of the patient experience that he had that made him decide he was going to leave. This one doesn't have that, it is just funny Christmas stories, so would highly recommend it for the Christmas season. And it also makes a really great gift. It's a really like small little book, so it could be a stocking filler or a gift for someone who you know likes to read. I don't know, it is a really great gift. I gave it to a few people the year it came out and everyone really loved it. Now, the next one, I feel like people are going to be confused by me recommending it, but hear me out. And that is Northern Lights by Philip Pullman. Yes, I hate the Northern Lights series, but the first book I loved. If the other two books had followed along with the way the first book went, I would have loved it, but no, they just became atheist propaganda, and I am an atheist, but still, it was too much. The other books I absolutely hate and I think they are terrible, but the first book is amazing. It is a wintry polar fantasy about a young girl who lives in this magical world where everyone has this like animal companion that is tied to their souls, and she has this amazing companion that she loves, and they're called demons, I think, and she basically lives wild and free in Oxford. She doesn't really have parents, she just kind of lives there, but her best friend ends up getting kidnapped, and so she has to go to the North Pole to rescue him. And yeah, it's amazing. It is really, really good. I love the first book. I finished the first book and I remember tweeting like, oh my god, why have I been sleeping on the Northern Lights series? It's amazing. And then I tried to read the second book and it was absolutely terrible. But the first book is amazing. So, and honestly, you can kind of treat the first book as a self-contained story if you ignore some of it. But like the main story about the kidnapping gets resolved in the first book, and it is kind of its own little story that then branches off into other stories. So yeah, I would highly recommend this if you want to just read one book for a wintry feel. Now, you can't deny the next one is Christmassy. The Christmasaurus by Tom Fletcher. This one is so good. It's so sweet, and I think this might have been his first book, like a first full-on middle grade book rather than a picture book, and I really love it. I need to read the rest of the series because it is now a trilogy, I think, but it is so wholesome and so cute. So this one kind of reimagines how the North Pole works, how Santa Claus works, everything like that. I'm not going to tell you too much because it's really fun to discover it in the book. There are also illustrations in this book. Let me see if I can find one from the beginning. They have little illustrations to help you understand. So one of the elements of this book is that the elves have to like dig out and mine the presents for children, and one day when they're like mining, they find a dinosaur egg. And this dinosaur egg hatches and he becomes the Christmasaurus. Our main character, William Trundle, asks all he wants for Christmas is a dinosaur because he is dinosaur obsessed. And basically Santa decides to make him a plushie version of the Christmasaurus, but the Christmasaurus sees it and decides to sneak in and become the present for the little boy. And it is about the little boy and the dinosaur being friends, and it is really, really cute. It is really good, and it has disability rep. The main character, William Trundle, uses a wheelchair, and it is just adorable. Like, it's such a cute, sweet, low stakes fantasy with a dinosaur, and what can you not love? Okay, I'm realising there's more middle grade books on this list than I thought there were, but still, middle grades are great for the winter, and you get so many more Christmassy middle grades than any other books, I feel, because middle grades are a bit more whimsical. So my next recommendation though is a darker one, and that is The Clockwork Crow by Catherine Fisher. This is part of the Clockwork Crow trilogy. It's the first book, and they are all wintry themed dark steampunk fantasies. So they're kind of creepy, kind of spooky, so if you have a kid maybe that loves spooky books but what you want them to read something a bit more wintry, or if you yourself like wintry spooky books, this is definitely one to read. So this one is about a young girl who is an orphan. It's based on Welsh folklore as well, by the way, and basically she gets adopted by these kind of like old family friends who live in the Welsh countryside, and she arrives thinking she's going to finally have a magical Christmas with the family again, but she discovers that actually there's a lot of misery in this home. There used to be a young boy living there, but he disappeared. And basically, while she's waiting for the train, a man hands her a parcel and tells her, don't give it to anyone except me and do not put it together. She puts it together, and it turns out to be a talking clockwork crow. And basically she finds out that there are these sinister forces acting in this house who kidnapped the young boy there, and that she needs to go and rescue him with the help of the clockwork crow and a magical snow globe. So it just is so good. It is really spooky. Like, this genuinely put me on edge. It has like Coraline vibes to me, where like I generally felt a bit spooked out by it, but it's definitely still children appropriate, and it's definitely wintry as well because it's all snowy and Christmassy, and yeah, it is just a good spooky Christmas book. So if you're not past the spooky vibes yet, this is one to read. My next recommendation is another middle grade, and that is Sky Song by Abby Elphinstone. This is set in like a North Pole kind of setting, but it's set in a magical world called Urkemold, which is ruled over by an evil ice queen. There are different tribes of people living in different areas of this world, but they are all hidden because they don't want to be captured by the evil ice queen, which most of the adults have been. But it's about a young girl who was living in this enchanted music box, so she ends up escaping and finding these people in a tribe, and they are trying to then work together to bring down the evil ice queen, but she has no voice because the ice queen stole her voice. And she meets a young boy who still has the ability to use magic to create inventions, which people don't really like anymore. But together they try to work together to bring down the evil ice queen. It is awesome. If you like Narnia, this is one that I would highly recommend. It kind of has Narnia vibes. And yeah, it just is such a lovely fantasy. It's so sweet, but such a great adventure as well. And I genuinely didn't know what was going to happen. I thought it was really inventive, really creative, and very, very unique. I just loved it. Next up we have a young adult fantasy, and that is Splinters of Scarlet by Emily Bain Murphy. So this is set in, I want to say Denmark? But basically this is about a young woman named Marit who has the ability to use magic but keeps it a secret, because in this world the more you use magic the more likely it is to kill you, and it will freeze you from the inside out. So she keeps this magic a secret because she doesn't want to get exploited and she doesn't want to die. She's living in an orphanage and has this best friend called Eve who she kind of views as her younger sister. She leaves the orphanage but still stays nearby to keep in touch with Eve and to keep an eye on her, but then Eve gets adopted and she panics because she thinks something suspicious is going on with this family, so she reveals to them that she can use magic in order to get a job living with this family and working for them. Her magic is that she can basically sew using her fingers, so she can repair tears just by like running her finger along it, stuff like that. And so they hire her as a seamstress at their house. And so she is there to keep an eye on Eve, make sure everything's okay, but also her father died in the mines owned by this family and she thinks something happened and there's some kind of conspiracy there. So she is kind of there to keep an eye on Eve, make sure she's okay, but also to unpick the conspiracy behind what happened to her dad. And it is set in winter and it's definitely very, very wintry. It is so magical, it's so creative, so unique, and I really loved it. It's one of those fantasy books where it has a lot of tension because there's a mystery to it, but it still has a bit of a whimsical fantasy element to it that I really, really loved. At this point, I feel like everyone's going to just skip the next book because I talk about it so much, but I'm going to talk about it again because I love it, and that is Northchild by Edith Patu. This is one of my absolute favourite books of all time. I recommend it to everyone I can, and I really, really love it. This is currently being marketed as a middle grade, but it is almost in between middle grade, young adult in my opinion. It is like an older middle grade, younger young adult book. So this one again I think is set somewhere like Norway, Finland, something like that. I'm not sure if it's ever established, but I think it's Norway. And it's about this world where the mother is very superstitious and she believes that the direction in which you are facing when you give birth to a child dictates what that child's personality is going to be like. And she decides she wants to have a child for every point on the compass except north, because she was told that her north-born child would die crushed under ice and snow. So she has a child for every point except north successfully, but then one of her children dies and she decides to like basically replace the child and have another one, because that child was low-key her favourite child, and that child I believe was east facing, which is what the mother was, and so she feels like really connected to that. She wants another east facing child, but secretly she ends up having a north-facing child. But she lies, says that the child was east-facing and tells her that her whole life. But this child, named Rose, basically is a wild child and is very obviously not an east-facing child. And she lives this kind of... So she's very wild. She's just always out and about and just doing whatever she wants to do, and she's definitely not fitting this east-facing child mould. Then one day a polar bear appears at their door, and he's talking, and he says that if Rose comes with him to live in his castle for a year, he will solve all the family's problems because they are living in poverty. And Rose agrees to go with him. And so she ends up living with this polar bear in his palace, basically carved into the walls of this like cliff. And so she lives there with him and like these two servants that he has, and yeah, it is a retelling of a fairy tale that I can never remember the name of, and it is incredible. It's kind of 50-50, where you have half of the book about the palace and about living there, and it's got the mystery element of why is she there, and then there's also an adventure element that is just so good, and I I just want everyone to read it because I love it so much. Like, this is one of those books that I read as a child and I have never forgotten, and I'm really impressed by that because, like, I didn't own it, I borrowed it from the library as a child, and I remembered the name for years because it had that much of an impact on me. So do with that information what you will. I love this book. And the next book is another one for if you want a bit more of a spooky read this winter, and that is Wranglestone by Darren Charlton. This is a young adult, kind of a thriller, kind of a horror, but it's not too intense. This is about a world where basically there's been an illness and these zombies are taking over, and it's about a community living in Wranglestone on the lakes, and they basically live on these little islands out in the lakes in cabins on stilts, so that in the summer the zombies can't get to them because they can't get across the water. But every winter the lake freezes over and they have to go on high alert because the zombies can't get to them. So Peter, who lives there, has never really felt like he belongs, and he definitely has more feminine traits than masculine, which is really frustrating because people want him to be really masculine. And basically one day he makes a big mistake and gets told that he has to go into the mainland with his friend Cooper and hunt down the zombies basically with Cooper. And he has a massive crush on Cooper. But while they're out there, they find more than zombies, and they find out that there's a dark secret going on about Wranglestone's past. Both the boys were born and raised in Wranglestone, so they don't know how it originated. This is really good. It was very creative, I'm saying that about every book, but it was very unique, and it tells a story that I wasn't expecting it to. It's got a very sweet romance in it as well, which is just lovely. And I really like the tension, I like the way things were revealed, and yeah, just a really solid YA light thriller, light horror, and I can't wait for the next book, honestly. And my final wintry recommendation is my last middle grade on the list as well. That is Frostheart by Jamie Littler, which honestly is just peak Christmassy wintry book. So I'm trying to get this like visible in the ring light, but basically this is about Ash, who lives in this polar world, and he is a song weaver, which means he can communicate with the monsters that live outside the compounds that he lives in. He is an orphan, and so he is there being raised by a yeti. Basically they don't trust him because they believe that song weavers can get taken over by the monsters. It can kind of be reversed, so he is kind of shunned, and basically one day he accidentally uses his song weaving to save the day, and even though he saved the day, they're suspicious of him, so they cast him out, and he ends up aboard this, like, what is equivalent of like a pirate ship kind of. It's about these people who go around on the sledge who are traders, and he joins them on an adventure, and it's really wholesome, really sweet, and again really unique and creative. I love how unique some of these wintry worlds are because they just have to like make stuff up because there's not a lot going on in these wintry areas. And yeah, I really liked it. It was a fun fantasy that keeps you on your toes, and the illustrations are cute, and yeah, I really like it. It's part of a trilogy, so if you like it, there are 3 whole books to read. So those are all of my wintry recommendations for you. Hopefully there is something there for everybody, and hopefully there's something that you are going to read. If you do read any of these, let me know, and if you have read them before, let me know what you think in the comments as well. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to see more content from me. All of my social media links are down in the description below. If you want to leave me a comment to let me know you are here, leave me your favourite Santa or elf emoji in the comments below. Thank you again for watching. Bye!